Hi, Richard here. I'm making a hall table. It's got 3 curved sides, roughly triangular in shape, and it's all veneered. And the top is veneered with this beautiful redwood burl. I haven't cut it to shape yet. And whilst I was making it, I haven't made a video for a while, but whilst I was making it, I did the 2 side sections and I veneered the top. So before I started making the final component, I thought I would video my process, and I've made a video about that, and in it I show how I go from the sketch, the rough sketch of my tabletop here. This is the front, and then I make a template out of MDF. In the video I show how to use a flush trim bit on a router table to form these ribs. The ribs are screwed together. Here you can see them screwed together on the bottom. There are several ribs in this curved form with a flexible plywood skin on the top. And then in the final part of the video I show how I glue up the flexible plywood, the veneer, and obviously with a caul on top. And this is the finished result. A really nice, clean result in Kingwood. So I hope you enjoy the video. So this template was from a previous project, and when I compared it, I keep all my templates because they're very useful. You know, curve's a curve at the end of the day, and it's actually a pretty good match to my sketch. It's about ½ an inch difference in the radius. So I was pretty happy when I found that, and I decided to work with this template. And the next thing to do is you want to work out for your vacuum press how many ribs you need. The vacuum press exerts a tremendous amount of force, and if your ribs are spaced too far apart, you will see undulations, or you will see the effect of that gap through your veneer. So my apron is about 7 inches wide, so I've got a piece here which is 8 inches, so a little bit wider. And essentially what I'm going to do is create my form, something like this. And then one at the edge. I'll put a skin over it. And the gaps here are small enough that you won't see waves in the veneer. So the next step is, once you've drawn your curve here, and you've cut it roughly on the bandsaw, you need to make these precise. So what you do, I've marked my center line here. You can mark any point along the template and mark the corresponding position on the rib. Typically you would do the center line or the two extreme ends. The only reason you have that is so that you can line up each piece in the same place. Now it's very important that you continue that line along, because obviously this is going to get routed away, so you still want to have your line. So I followed it all the way around. So I line up my marks. Good clamping pressure here. That's a bit tight, so just move it along. It's a bit tight. Come up to here maybe. That's good, a nice solid click. That's pretty good. And actually what I'm going to do, just to show you, I'm going to route the first one, and then it's a very simple procedure. Remove this, we marked center line, insert that in the same place, route the second one, and so on. So I'll set up the router table and be right back. So I took a lot of care with that cut, particularly, as you probably noticed, was inching up very carefully, because this is where at the end you've got an exposed bit, you can really have some kickback and so on. So I took a lot of care there, but it's a beautiful result, smooth as anything. So here's the current state of play on the form. Clamped them all together and I flat planed, using a jointing plane, the bottom, so that it was sitting nice and flat. Then I flipped them over and, using a spoke shave, cleaned them all up. Now the width of my veneer, this piece, gives me about 1/8 of an inch either side, which is fine. So I made sure that my two outside ribs are flush with this piece of pine. I don't want my vinyl bag following the shape of any rough edges. And then I just put the two in the middle. The next thing to do is screw them. Make sure your screws are nicely countersunk. You can use glue as well, but just for ease I'm using screws. And then I softened all the edges, particularly on the corners here, rounded these over, rounded all the edges so that it doesn't leave a memory on the bag, or tear the bag or anything like that. So the next thing to do is put a skin over these ribs, and for that I'm using a 3/8 piece of plywood. That's what's called. So I guess it would be these two. And I'm going to screw these in, and these are the same width as my form. So okay. Alright, that's the form. Now I just want to clean up the edges, make sure there's no overhang. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Alright, that's ready for the vacuum bag. So I've got the form in the bag all ready to go, and I lay out my pieces, and if they're too large to be laid out next to each other, then I lay them in reverse order, and I glue and I put them on the side, and I keep going, and until I finish with the top in the right place, and I go straight into the bag. I use simple yellow glue. I've used white glue in the past as well. Once you start, you've got about 5-10 minutes to get everything, so it should be plenty of time. So, I'm quite liberal with the glue, because this bending plywood, when it bends, the glue sinks into the ridges like that. So you've got to be quite liberal. I've covered my table here with wax paper. Now typically what you would do is you would glue both sides of the substrate, but you don't glue the veneer. I don't glue the veneer, but I use a very liberal coat of glue on the substrate that's going, that the veneer is actually going on. Okay, so that's the first layer. This is quite a small glue up, so not that push for time, but I've had much larger glue ups, and you know, what you can do in that situation is break it down. Break it down into 2 stages. You know, glue up the substrate maybe, and then glue the veneer. But that's the next one. Right, now this is the most important layer. Now this veneer that I'm using is not paper backed. It's quite a robust veneer. So you don't need to glue the veneer itself. It will curl up, be quite difficult to work with, even if I'm fast. With a paper-back veneer, and a lot of the burls are paper-back because they're so fragile, you know, they cut the veneer so thin now that you have to put a paper backing on it. With a paper-back veneer, then I would put glue on that. I would put glue on the back of the paper-back veneer. Right, that's a nice coat there. I should be able to see some squeeze out around the edges. Okay. sure there's no dust on the bottom. And that's good. Okay, now I'm gonna... Okay, ready now to put the form in. Now try and centre it up. I've got a mark here just to denote the centre line, so I want to make sure that's in line, otherwise I'm going to have an asymmetrical curve. Okay, that looks good. I've got my cauls ready to go. Put the first one in, and the second. Make sure the wax paper is face down. I've done that before. It's annoying. Okay. Now, I use this C-channel closer, which works really well as a bag sealer. Slides in there. Alright, and then I'll start in the middle. And go to either end. Okay, I'm good. Now, good. A quick word about vacuum pumps. This was my first pump, which was given to me by a friend of mine, Horatio, and I did some really nice pieces with this pump. And I picked up this about a year ago, secondhand in Vermont, and it's just a terrific unit. It's reliable, it's quiet, it's powerful, and you know, the previous owner in Vermont looked after it absolutely superbly. It's in perfect condition, and I look after it very well as well. I use it when I'm veneering. I use it in auto cycling mode. This is a continuous run mode for when you're using the pump like a vacuum clamp, but in auto cycling mode you switch it on, pressure in the bag goes up to 20-25 bars of pressure, machine switches off. As it cycles down over the next half an hour to an hour, when it reaches 4 or 5 bars, it switches back on for a few seconds until it reaches that 20-25 area again, and it will keep doing that a couple of times an hour. So it's an excellent press and one of my favourite machines. So back in the workshop, ready to switch the press off and check out the result. See how tight this bag is after several hours. First thing I like to do is just check the bag. That's great. Now, take this out and we'll get rid of the cauls gently. That's just the wax paper. Then I like to check with my fingers just to make sure there are no ridges, and that's good. And then that's it. That's my piece. Got glue all the way down the sides. Nicely there, nice squeeze out. And at the ends, that's a really successful job. So now I'm going to clean that up with a hand plane. Actually what I do, just a little trick, it's quite a difficult piece to clamp. What I do is I lay this on its side, and I clamp the piece, leaving a little bit exposed, maybe half an inch or so. I clamp it here and here, and I use a hand plane or a spoke shave or something to clean that up. So, and this I'll stick on the wall, and I'll use it for the next project. So now I like to let the bag just rest, recover its shape before I fold it up. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the videos, and thanks very much for watching.